The threats were made on Friday, the 13th of December. They say officers are carrying out an assessment of the allegations to determine what further action may be required. Yes, this is developing hour by hour, and we just have had confirmation from the Metropolitan Police. What they say is that on Thursday, the 6th of March, they received an allegation of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. So this is a complaint that has been made to the police just this week based on alleged threats made on the 13th of December. So
Reform UK promised to be different, to be the voice of the people standing against establishment politics. But what happens when a party fighting for free speech appears to silence its own members for criticising the leader? Rupert Lowe's suspension following his criticism of Nigel Farage reveals a startling contradiction at Reform's core. His alleged threats conveniently emerged right after he dared suggest Farage has a messiah complex.
Accordingly, we appointed an independent King's Counsel to conduct an investigation into the veracity of these complaints. To date, Mr Lowe has yet to cooperate with this investigation. Our political allegations of serious bullying have been made against the Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe. The party says it's received complaints from 2 women who worked in his offices.
Timing that raises serious questions about what's really happening behind Reform's carefully crafted public image. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. So you want to talk about free speech champions until someone speaks freely about you? That seems to be the lesson from Reform UK this week, as the party's response to internal criticism has revealed quite a lot about its true character. When Rupert Lowe sat down with the Daily Mail to voice his concerns about Nigel Farage's leadership style, he couldn't have anticipated the swift and severe backlash that would follow. In that interview, Lowe dared to suggest that Farage suffers from something of a messiah complex and characterised Reform UK as functioning more like a protest vehicle than a serious political party. Fair criticism or not, what happened next speaks volumes. The timing couldn't be more suspicious. Within just 24 hours of Lowe's interview going public, Reform UK suddenly remembered some allegedly serious incidents from December that apparently nobody felt compelled to report until now. These conveniently timed allegations include threats of violence against party chairman Zia Youssef, bullying, and discrimination regarding someone's perceived disability. Serious charges that mysteriously emerged only after Lowe spoke out against the leadership. Farage's response was equally telling. Rather than addressing the substance of Lowe's criticism, he immediately went on the offensive in an interview with Harry Cole, asserting that Reform MPs wouldn't have had a cat's chance in hell of winning without him. This statement reveals how Farage views the party, not as a collective democratic enterprise, but as his personal political vehicle. What makes Lowe particularly dangerous to Farage's dominance is his substantial social media following, which reportedly exceeds Farage's own reach. In today's political landscape, such digital influence represents real power, perhaps explaining the urgency behind neutralising Lowe before his criticism could gain traction. Ben Habib didn't mince words when assessing the situation, describing it as a declaration of war against Lowe, and stating he is 99% certain it's all trumped up nonsense. Even more damning was Habib's revelation about Reform UK's internal structure. There is no mechanism privately in the party to be heard by the leader. For a party that positions itself as the champion of democratic values, this admission is extraordinarily damaging. The autocrat who despises autocracy, that's the glaring paradox at Reform UK's core. A party constructed on promises to fight the establishment elite has created arguably the most undemocratic power structure in British politics today. What could possibly explain this extraordinary contradiction? Reform UK's public image versus its private reality couldn't be more starkly opposed. While publicly positioning itself as the champion of democratic values and free expression, internally the party operates with what Jonathan List aptly described as having an air of Stalinism. This isn't hyperbole, it's a structural reality. The party attracts voters who feel marginalised by traditional politics, while paradoxically enforcing an internal hierarchy that prevents even elected representatives from expressing dissent. The evolution of Reform from a corporate entity to a political party appears to have been largely cosmetic. Despite its transformation on paper, the fundamental question remains: has any meaningful democratic reform actually occurred? All evidence suggests the party continues to function essentially as Farage's personal vehicle, with organisational structures designed to concentrate rather than distribute power. Within this autocratic framework, certain figures play crucial enforcement roles. Ben Habib didn't mince words when describing Zia Youssef and Lee Anderson as Farage's lapdogs who do his bidding. These aren't merely colleagues or supporters, they function as loyalty enforcers within a structure that values obedience over independent thought. This leadership model creates a mathematical problem as much as a philosophical one. Consider the electoral mathematics. Reform UK received an impressive 4.1 million votes, exceeding the Liberal Democrats' 3.5 million, yet secured only 5 parliamentary seats compared to the Lib Dems' 72. These numbers highlight not just the unfairness of the electoral system, but also raise questions about whether Reform's current structure can translate popular support into effective representation. Political analysts point to a troubling pattern in personality-driven parties like Reform UK. Unlike institutionally driven political organisations, parties built around a central figure typically struggle to establish sustainable governance structures. This fundamental weakness virtually guarantees instability and internal conflict as the movement grows. The central question becomes whether Reform can evolve beyond its current contradictions. Can a movement founded on giving voice to the voiceless justify having no internal mechanisms for dissent? Can it credibly position itself against establishment elites while creating its own elite power structure with even fewer checks and balances? So where does this leave us? The Lowe-Farage feud transcends a mere personality clash. It exposes the fragility of Reform UK's entire political project. What's particularly concerning is that Ben Habib's warning about this internal conflict becoming a tragedy for the United Kingdom has genuine merit. Not because Reform is some political messiah, but because its potential collapse would orphan nearly 40% of the electorate who feel fundamentally unrepresented by mainstream parties. History may well be repeating itself. Farage's previous political vehicles, UKIP and the Brexit Party, followed remarkably similar trajectories. Rapid growth, significant electoral impact, then implosion through power struggles and leadership disputes once their primary objectives were achieved. The question for disillusioned voters isn't whether Reform UK can win power, but whether it can avoid becoming yet another footnote in Britain's political history. A flash of protest that briefly illuminated systemic problems without delivering lasting solutions to a political landscape desperately in need of genuine reform.